What would you think if someone came running into your office and the first thing that they said was, I've got bad news. We just lost 10% of our revenue this year. What would you think? What would you suspect was the reason why you lost 10% of your potential revenue for that year? Well, would you be surprised if they said, we just got a one-star online review? What would be your honest reaction? Well, the reality is that that is the cost. Hi, my name is Leighton. I'm with the team at KnowHow, and we are really happy to share with you that we have completed the first ever research project on 1,000 one-star reviews of the restoration industry. We dug deep into what is it that leads customers to take to their keyboards and just punish restoration companies online. What we did is we distilled it down to the 6 most common reasons why a customer would choose to give a restoration company just a scathing online review, permanently just etching their opinion on the online billboard. I think it was Jeff Bezos who said, it used to be that a customer, if upset, would tell 7 or 8 people. Nowadays in the internet world, if a person's upset, they will tell 7 to 8,000 people. And that is a new dynamic that's very different in the industry. Things are changing. Are you changing with them? Are you really leaning into the fact that as a restoration provider, if you aren't taking very seriously online reviews and how to impact them, how to resolve them, and frankly, how to be able to create predictable online results, then you really need to wake up and kind of join us in the 21st century.
So let's talk about what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about our analysis of 1,000 one-star reviews. We're going to talk about what does it actually cost to get a bad one-star online review as a restoration company or a construction company. And then we're going to really get into the details about what are the 6 most common reasons why customers choose to give a restorer an online review with 1 star. And then we want to talk about, well, how do you actually become a 5-star restorer? Someone who consistently delivers winning experiences across all their crews. And then I want to talk to you about our tool because we help restorers achieve this every day. So to kick things off, one of the things that we need to talk about is why are online reviews important? It just seems like one of those things that sometimes can just really be in the back of your mind as something you know is important, but we don't always take seriously. Well, I have news for you, is that most of us need to wake up and realize that we are in a very different business environment than we were even 5 years ago. Online reviews are big business, and companies that don't take them seriously get completely punished. So I want to talk about what percentage of consumers actually read online reviews today, what percentage of consumers actually trust online reviews. So let's look at some numbers, and these are well-researched numbers. Did you know that 91% of consumers read online reviews? Did you know that 84% of consumers trust the online review from kind of a random person at the same level as a friend or family member when they're considering whether or not they should use a business or say go to a restaurant? So let's talk about the cost of online reviews, because once you quantify it, your eyes are going to be opened. So for example, did you know that 94% of consumers say that when they read a bad online review, right, it causes them to avoid using that business, right? So they search the word restoration or contractor or construction, and then all these ads come up, and you know it, everyone just kind of stays on the first page. They only look at the first, handful of reviews, and if there are negative reviews, they're just going to move to your competitor. Did you know that one negative review has the potential to drive away 22% of potential prospects? So what does that mean? It means that 10 people come to your landing page, and almost 3 of them say, "Oof, not for me," and move on before doing more research, looking at your before and after photos, scrolling for better reviews. So what does that break down to? Well, if you're a business, as an example, doing say $2 million of revenue a year, well, 22% means that there are 29 projects that you could have landed had you not had that online review. Or if we just do some quick math based on industry averages, that's a loss of $232,000 revenue. Not for having a bad online review for, say, I'm a 3-star person, I'm a 2-star. It's a cost of one nasty review. So what did we do? We wanted to really understand what it is that actually causes a customer to just crush a restoration company online. So we did the first ever review of online reviews in the restoration industry. And so we analyzed 1,000 one-star reviews. These were across all 50 US states, and they had 7 common categories of why people complained. And so we're going to focus on the 6 largest, those being displayed on this graph here. And so we're going to get really into the granular detail. So let's talk about the first reason. The first reason why customers punish restoration companies online is because they received poor communication. So when you think about poor communication, you think about all the busyness that happens around a restoration job. It's so difficult to be able to follow up with customers, to be able to get them the information they want. But that is one of the reasons why they just crush restoration companies online. So let's talk about the most common root issues there. So when there are no-shows. So when there's a no-show, you have to ask yourself, well, how do I actually go about resolving that? So what we recommend is that you train your staff to understand the value of every prospect and every paying customer. So what do you mean by that? It's that, even though maybe Walmart called or a large commercial construction company called or a commercial building called and they have a water loss, well, the reality is that small project that maybe you chose not to call back, or you said you're going to be there at a certain time and you didn't show up, they have just as much punch online as a big company. And so we encourage you to make sure that you're breeding a culture in your team of picking up the phone. What might that look like? It might look like even that you're on site with your staff explaining something, a call comes in and you say, hey, just remember, I got to take this call. We take our calls. And then you take that call and you role model that you take your call on site in front of your staff. The other thing that we identified is that there was a lot of complaints around just the breakdown between handoff between the restoration team and then the rebuild team. And so when there's kind of almost this doldrum of communication and nobody's getting back to the customer, it creates a ton of frustration. And we saw hundreds of reviews of customers who were really disappointed about this. So what we recommend is that you implement rituals that might seem kind of strange to an outsider, right? So what might that look like? It might look like the fact that, when the construction team comes in, maybe there's, even a formal handing off of the contract or whatnot, or both teams meet on site and there's just, what might seem like a little bit of wasted productivity when you consider the fact that you're trying to avoid a couple $100,000 of prospective customers fleeing to the hills. It's actually not that expensive of an investment. We recommend you even consider something like a customer handoff meeting and just making it mandatory that when the restoration work is done, that the project manager meets with the project manager of the reconstruction, whether it's your team or it could be a subcontractor you're bringing in, and really do a thorough walk around with the customer to make sure that all of those little subtleties are handed off. It's not just the details of the project. It's maybe the customer, built a relationship with the restoring team, and maybe there's maybe there's things about the gate and the dog out or the time of day or whatever it is. But all of those little components have to be transferred. It's not just transferring over the details; it's transferring over the relationship. And I encourage you to be honest about forecasted turbulence. If you know that after the restoration work, you're bringing in the reconstruction work, let the customer know from the outset to say, hey, just to let you know, one area of our business that we're trying to improve is the handoff between departments. You're going to probably experience some turbulence. And so we just want you to be aware of that. We're working on it, but we just want you to have realistic expectations. And then another problem that often came up is that when the customer does have a complaint, the contractor's nowhere to be found. And so they just disappear, right? The project manager just doesn't pick up their call. They get the voicemails, they hear that nasty response, and they just say, you know what, I got other things to do. There's always something else to do. Your staff, and I can see this across the whole industry, your staff need to be trained in how do you resolve conflicts and how do you enter into conflictive and fictitious situations with people to be able to de-escalate them and to be able to bring a sense of calm. The other thing that we recommend is that you develop a conflict resolution process. When a person is getting yelled at or there's a frustrated customer, a person tends to go to kind of that fight or flight mode. And, they're not always thinking, how do I, reference all that training I've had. It's very helpful for them to be able to just quickly pull up, what are the 6 steps that we have to do to resolve a conflict. And it really just anchors that worker in a clear line of sight on how they resolve this stressful situation. The second reason why customers choose to give restoration companies 1-star reviews is simply because of poor quality workmanship. We looked at so many reviews of just nightmare jobs where I'm sure that restoration company had no intention of just, delivering such a poor workmanship product. But the reality is that if you're not intentional in developing a culture that values quality workmanship, or you're really, really overstretched, or you're really spread too thin, or frankly, you just do not have a system in place to be able to give your staff the clear guidance on what a good job looks like, you're going to have these types of complaints. So what were the most common issues? The first one is very simply the final product deteriorated very quickly. So meaning that, you handed the keys back and then they walked into the home and then all of a sudden, the door handle started to get loose and the paint started to crack and you're just immediately they're like, this was done very cheaply. And so what we recommend is, number one, when your estimator's coming in, set realistic expectations. If their insurance provider really just, really doesn't have, I would say they don't set a high threshold, let's say, for material quality, then they need to be aware of that. Similarly, if they're not looking to, pay for, say, the gold tier of reconstruction or restoration, then you need to be able to temper their expectations of what the final product's going to look like. We also recommend in that you create a culture that honors quality workmanship. So what does that mean? What it means is that, when you're out on a job site and you see somebody who really did a great job or something that just really looks immaculate, take a picture of it and share it with your team and say, hey, look at what Jose did. This is an amazing tile job, right? Or maybe you're meeting together with your team. Bring in a product expert and really have them get into the detail about how to really tape those seams really well or how to make sure that everything when it's installed looks perfectly. You want to build a culture where workmanship is really, really praised. And then you have to make sure your team know what done looks like. So when you're training new people, you have to come in and again, as much as you're on the clock, you need to be able to say, hey, this is not done yet, right? Let me show you what done looks like. And if you have some crews that are really your top crews, make sure they're taking photos of things so that staff have a reference of what done looks like. Another issue was that jobs just simply got left incomplete, okay? And so in those types of situations, what we recommend is that you institute a culture of what we call 101% complete. And what does that mean is that you set the completion mile marker, at the 115 yard line, just a little further back. What does that look like? Rather than saying, all right, guys, as soon as we get these doors on, we're out of here. No, what you say is, okay, everyone, as soon as we get the doors on, remember, we still are going to go over the front yard and rake everything up to make sure there was no, nails or particles. Hey, everyone, remember, we committed because we just kind of trampled their garden. We're going to replant all those flowers. You think about what is just slightly further beyond what the expectation of done is, because it just frankly just allows the staff to say, hey, heaven forbid something's not done as the flowers didn't get planted or something like that. We also recommend that you really be very mindful in how you build your compensation models with your project managers. We recommend that you even consider tying customer reviews to a project manager's customer compensation models. It's so impactful, reviews online today, that you have to consider it, you have to factor it into their compensation. Another common issue was just simply general negligence on the behalf of the contractor. That came up very often in a lot of these nasty reviews. So number one is that we recommend that you learn to extinguish fires of frustration with humility and sincere apologies. Have your staff ever actually heard you sincerely apologize in front of a customer and take ownership for something that didn't go wrong? One of the things that has to change in so many companies nowadays is they have to leave this idea that I can kind of be this gruff contractor because, that's just kind of the culture of the industry. The reality is that now with people armed with a keyboard and people that frankly increasingly are not very handy themselves, so much of a restoration company's opportunity lies in their ability to just embrace being a service company, being a customer service company. We're going to talk more about that. And the last thing we would recommend in this is that you make the right way to do things very easy to access. One of the most common things that we see in restoration companies of all sizes is that if you ask a technician, you ask a worker, you ask even a project manager to say, hey, if you have a question, where do you go? And they say, you try to get someone on the phone, but other than that, you kind of just figure it out. Your team needs tools so that they can just instantly access, the questions, the how-to, the processes, the workflows, and it should be on their phones. The number 3 reasons why people give restoration companies 1-star reviews is simply because of delays. Customers reference delays in multiple different issues. We saw this clear across the board in every state. So let's get into the common issues. Well, the first one is that customers said that the contractor was chasing some other client really before completing their job. And so you've maybe been there before, right? You've got that, you might even have a couple loose ends right now as you're thinking about this, right? You chased after that big water loss, at City Hall or who knows where, and then you left that small condo or that apartment or, that young family or who knows what, right? The small project where the ceiling didn't quite get done, but you're like, well, you know what? I got to go after the whale or my competitors are going to get in there. Well, the reality is you got to train your staff that in today's business environment where everybody is online and everybody, there's a saying that, I think it was Jeff Bezos who said, it used to be the case that if you upset somebody, they'd tell 6 or 7 people. Nowadays, you upset someone, they will tell 7,000 people because they will take it to the web, to the online web. So we recommend that you really train your staff and you embrace the mindset that remember that the small fish in this world bite just as hard as the big fish. Walmart is just one review. Mrs. Smith down the street, whose ceiling is still unfinished, they actually have the same weight when it comes to just online reviews. And finally, we recommend that you find a way to tie, completion with equal weighting with other areas of your staff's compensation if you have incentive-based compensation. Another issue is simply that the construction division dropped the ball. So what we recommend there, first off, is we recommend that you just don't approach construction like you do restoration. Really, they're in many ways, they're 2 different trades. The restoration process, as is you're coming in a period where things are so chaotic. You have to be able to deal with abatement issues that really can be quite hazardous. You're really dealing with that customer at the highest level of stress, the highest level of crisis. And in the construction, largely you're coming in after everything's been resolved, and so you kind of clean slate. And so what could maybe get away at kind of that really chaotic stage. Well, now you really have to be able to start anew with a new perspective, and the customer has different expectations at the construction phase. And so that's something you have to be very mindful of. The other thing is that you want to consider continuity in your project managers. Do you have project managers that look after, say, 3 different components? Do you have this person that looks after maybe the mitigation, and this person looks after this person looks after... If you can institute continuity, it means more training for your project managers. But the reality is that really protects the customer relationship. Another issue is simply overpromising on a timeline. That came up a lot of times as customers said, you know what, hey, I wouldn't, I'm just going off of what they told me, right? So we recommend that you create a practice of always communicating that tasks would take 10% longer than expected. Now, this isn't to deceive the customer, but really it's just to kind of give you a cushion. So if you know that the job is going to get done, say, on, you really feel confident it's going to get done on Friday, give yourself a little bit of airspace and say, you know what, we're going to work hard to get out of here by end of day Monday. And I know that's a little bit later than you wanted, but that's probably the realistic timeline. They're like, oh, we were really hoping to get in for the weekend. You say, I appreciate that, but you're going to be in this home for years to come, so let's plan for Monday. And then if you do get out of there Friday, call up and say, hey, good news. You know what? We know you wanted to get in on the weekend. We really turned up the heat, and we're all done. Come on over. You know what? You can really just wow a customer. And the other thing is that, and this is really important, is that so often restorers make the mistake of kind of aligning the customer. You know, you're like, it's all about the timeline. When am I going to get my house back? When am I going to get my house back? And we recommend that you really align with the customer first on the outcome to say, what does this need to look like to be done? You know, what is done look like? And once you align on that, then you want to be able to, you know, give yourself some airspace when you're aligning on expectations around the timeline and the deadline. The fourth reason, the number 4 reason why people just crush restoration companies online is because they feel overcharged. We saw so many online reviews where customers really just felt, frankly, they kind of got shafted, right? And you know, maybe you could think of some times where customers said, whoa, they looked at the bill and they're like, whoa, this is not what we discussed, right? So let's talk about some of the common issues associated with that. Well, first is just lots of negative reviews around vague or surprising pricing. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is situations where a customer said, "Hey, what is this?" Or "Hold on a second, what's going on here?" Right? Or they'll say, "Hey, I didn't ask for that," and they say, "Well, you know, in the hustle and the bustle of the project, you know, we had to do that." They say, "Well, I didn't ask for that," right? They're like, "Well, you got to pay for that." And so let's talk about how you resolve and avoid some of those really nasty reviews. So first is that it's all about a persona change. We strongly recommend restoration companies to put on a persona of being a trusted advisor, you know, kind of frankly more like your family doctor than kind of, you know, Jimmy get her done. You know, so often we saw reference to contractors who said, "Oh yeah, if you choose us, we're going to get in here so fast, we're going to get this back online, and you're going to be back in your home before you know it." And the reality is that a much more effective persona is to come in as a trusted advisor, to partner with them, and to say, "Hey, look, you know what? This is a big job, this is a big project, a lot of mess here, and so I've been in this industry for a long time. I've worked with many customers through this situation. I'm going to be, you know, your key contact for this, and we're going to be a team for the next couple months here, the next 6 months here." And so to get through this, you know, you're going to need to trust me and understand that I've got your best you know, I've got your best in heart. And so that's more of a trusted advisor persona, and it especially resonates well with customers in today's marketplace. The other thing is that you have to explain pricing changes proactively. Again, communication is such a key part of this, and it's hard when there's so much communication that has to be moved. But it's so critical because all it takes is one surprise. I like to, you know, when I used to run crews, I would tell them, I say, "Remember, the rule is," and they'd say, "Yeah, I know. Never let the customer be surprised." And that's exactly. If you break something, if you wreck something, if you're going to be a little late, whatever it is, do not let the customer be surprised. Don't let them find out. Just let them know, right? And so that's one of the things we strongly recommend. Another issue was just simply disparities between the work that was expected to be conducted and what was actually conducted, right? And so the first thing that we recommend, and it's kind of a silly recommendation when you at face value, but when you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense, is to turn your staff into, we call it a worksite paparazzi, right? And so as your staff are doing jobs, the reality is that a lot of your projects are relatively, you know, the same. You know, it's the same: fire, smoke, mold, water. You know, I mean, they each have their own unique aspects, but the final product, you know, in many cases looks the same. And so what we recommend is that just as your staff are going through projects, tell them to say, "Hey, I want everyone to start just doing a better job taking nice photos of, okay, once the demo is done, this is what it looks like. You know, once everything has been, you know, reinstalled, this is what it looks like." You know, the reality is that unless they're paying for the cleaners to come in, this is what it's going to look like. And so when you're setting up that project, to say, "Let me show you kind of, you know, what the timeline looks like. Let me give you a visual tour of what's coming down the line." and be able to, on an iPad or a laptop or print it off, whatever, and say, and this is what the demo stage, this is what your neighbors are going to see. They're going to see your lawn. Your lawn's going to be trampled, right? So at the end of the day, a customer, if they're not surprised, if they know what to expect, at the end of the day, it's not going to result in them really just, again, taking their grievances online. So those are kind of those virtual behind the scene tours. And we do like the idea of what we call the 10-minute rule. So many issues that came up in these one-star reviews were just simply tied to a person came in and and there was just, frankly, just everything looked perfect, but there's just a bunch of garbage just stuffed into the one closet, and it just really soured the milk, right? And so you want to be able to come on site and say, hey, everyone, hey, let's just take 10 minutes and just tidy this up quick. Hey, you know what? Is this how you always keep your van? Let's just take 10 minutes and let's get all this garbage and all these receipts out of here. That idea of just saying, look, just take 10 minutes and let's just do this right, okay? The other thing that was an issue was just simply the dishonest representation of materials and labor. Okay. And so this is unfortunately something that came up very frequently where, we saw situations where contractors, frankly, and restorers clearly were doing things that were dishonest. Maybe you've heard of these stories, right? It's not, I'm not saying it's you, but maybe you've heard of situations where people drop off more equipment than's necessary and kind of rack up the bill, leave it there for a few extra days, rack up the bill, right? All of that, not only is it dishonest, customers aren't stupid. Right? Customers today are actually increasingly more research oriented. They're more armed with information, and they're more likely to pick up the phone, call their claims adjuster, and say, hey, is this how it's supposed to be going? So we say, don't listen to the sirens, right? The reality is that trusted expert, a person who says, you know what? The reality is that some guys will come in here and tell you, oh, you're going to need about 10 air movers. The reality is you need about 5. That's just the way that, this needs to be dried out here. And so it's going to look like we don't have all the equipment that you thought. But the reality is that you've got really good ventilation here. And so it's going to be fine. And that's going to save you a lot of money. And they're like, oh, okay. That's more of a trusted advisor. And the reality is that no one built a restoration empire in 6 months. Right? No, it takes years. And so commit to the fact that it's going to be a marathon. The trusted advisor will always win the marathon. We also recommend that you avoid just tying compensation incentives entirely to just the margins, the profitability of the job, right? That's important, don't get me wrong. Margins are pretty tight in this industry. But the reality is you also have to tie them to other things that are important. Things like, for example, workmanship and customer experience and at the end of the day, things like that. So the number 5 reasons why people punish restoration companies online is we just refer to it as contractor drama, okay? And so these are scenarios where, frankly, the person just couldn't believe that this is how the person was behaving. So let's look at some of the more specific common issues. So one was, frankly, just moral and ethical concerns that arose. So what does that look like? Well, those are situations where, frankly, a customer, like we could tell you some crazy stories that we read, but they come down to situations where, the customer just didn't feel safe, right? Or they just really got the sense that the contractor was really leading them on to say, oh yeah, and when your claims agent calls, I make sure you tell them this, right? Because they're idiots and they don't know what's going on, right? The customer starts to kind of get that spidey sense that say, this is actually a little shady right now. So number 1 is that we recommend that you really build into your team the fact that there are things that your company believes to be right and believes to be wrong. Because ultimately, beliefs guide decisions and actions, especially in stressful situations, right? And so you want to make sure that when you're on site with your staff, don't just say, hey, that's all right, don't do it that way, don't do it that way. Ground it in a belief. Say, hey, remember, at our restoration company, we believe that we always need to work as though the customer's here. Or we believe that we need to treat each job site like we're working on our grandmother's job site, right? And that's what we just believe. And so that it influences our actions. And your staff need to hear you say stuff like that. So often when you're building soft skills and customer skills into your staff and you're role modeling things, you're going to feel a little awkward. You're going to feel kind of like, you're kind kind of being like a parent, you know what I mean? And that's natural because you're role modeling the beliefs and the actions, the behaviors that you want them to follow when you're not there. We also recommend that you invest in proper reference calls and background checks. A lot of these complaints were, people, the catastrophe event came in and they had to staff up really quick, and you just didn't do your due diligence, and some of the contractors that you brought in, or some of the staff, they really just gave off a bad vibe, or frankly, it was pretty clear that maybe they actually had a past that you didn't look into, and that customer basically felt very unsafe. Another issue when it comes to contractor drama is just disrespect towards the customer, right? And this is unfortunately very prevalent in these reviews, and it's completely avoidable. So how do you do this? Is that when workers are on site and they are going through a stressful situation on a really breakneck budget and a breakneck timeline, well, the reality is tempers can flare, right? And so in those moments, they have to reference, what is the expectation of customer service? If you haven't clarified that, honestly, they're just going to defer to how they deal with situations in their personal life. We say set a vision for customer service. And KnowHow, you could ask anyone from our customer success team that I always say, at KnowHow, we want to be the Ritz-Carlton of customer success, customer service in the restoration industry. And we all kind of have this association of what it would be like to check in at the Ritz-Carlton and, call down and say, hey, I want more towels, or I want my towels to be fluffier, right? At the end of the day, you can envision someone in the line saying, no problem, sir. You got it, ma'am. And you want to be able to set a vision for what your customer service looks like. So your staff have something that they have to keep in mind, that just before they, when they bite their tongue, just before they respond to the customer, they say, you know what, we've got a vision for customer service here. And you can also enforce it when you say, hey, that's not how we treat people. Remember, this is our vision for customer service. We also recommend that you role play and you role model and you praise. So if you are uncomfortable doing role modeling with your workers, so you just park the van around the block and say, hey, I know this is your first job. This customer is pretty upset. And so I just want to do a couple scenarios, and you're going to be the customer, I'm going to be you. And I'm just going to show you how you respond to situations like this. You might be thinking, oh, I don't know, that feels kind of awkward. You know what's awkward? Getting crushed online and wondering why you're not getting any more jobs. That's awkward, right? Telling your staff that, hey, you know what? We're gonna have to wind down a few things here because we're just not bringing in the work that we used to, right? That's awkward. So get over it and start role playing with your staff. It's a proven training process, right? We also recommend you role play. So if you're showing up on a site, or your project manager's showing up and they've been around for a while, say, hey, I want you to role model when you're there with him what like 140% quality customer walk around looks like. Right? And say, hey, showtime. And telling the new worker to say, I want you to pay attention very carefully around how I treat the customer, how I speak, how I answer their questions, and how I listen and I give them, my full attention. And then when they're driving back to the shop, say, do a bit of a debrief. Say, so what did you see me do? What did you observe? How did I handle her questions, right? At the end of the day, that level of intentionality is necessary nowadays. And praise people. When people take care of the customer, make sure everyone in the whole team knows about it, right? You should just have kind of a practice of sharing wins. If somebody gets a good customer review, paste that on the wall for everyone to see, right? There's an old proverb that says, whatever you honor, you'll get more of, right? I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but whatever you honor, you're going to get more of. And the fact of the matter is, if you honor good workmanship, good customer service, people are going to want to be recognized by you, okay? And the last thing we'd say is that when you find out that someone has been disrespectful to a customer, I'm not saying be disrespectful to your worker, right? What I'm saying is you need to punish them right away. You should address it immediately, right? In an assertive tone, not aggressive, an assertive tone, you meet with that worker and you say, this was completely unacceptable. That is not how we treat people at this company. and you want to get really zeroed in on make sure they're clear that that the specific behaviors were not appropriate, and then from there, right, you need to make a decision, right? Was this the type of disrespect that merits getting terminated? Is this the type of disrespect where going forward some of your trust is being recalled, and you're going to need to spend some time with them and observe how they interact with customers? But at the end of the day, you have to make it. And it's so hard when you're so busy, but you've got to make it a priority to deal with those situations. The other issue that comes up is just sloppiness on the job site. This is such an unfortunate reason for a one-star review, but it happens. Sloppiness is simply the work is being done. Heck, even the customer service is fine, but the guys don't take their boots off when they come in, or when they wash their hands in the sink, they leave a mess, or they just don't sweep up every day because they're like, we'll get it when we're out of here. Or there's garbage blowing around the customer's site. At the end of the day, when there's sloppiness on the website, when there's sloppiness on the job site, okay, frankly, customers will just take it to the web, take it online. So first things first, we recommend you create daily rituals with things like corny titles, right? And so as an example, sometimes you'll see things like the 2020, right, or the job site buffer or something like that. But you'll say, hey, remember when 2020? They're like, yeah, 2020, right? You'll say, what the heck is 2020? It's like, remember, you can arrive 20 minutes early because we do a proper setup. And 20 minutes, just if it's, say you wrap things up at 6, who knows? Say, hey, 5:40, let's go 2020. Everyone's like, oh yeah, 2020, right? Because you say, we build in time to do a tidy up across the whole property. Remember, we do a lap around the house. We do a lap around the building to make sure there's no garbage. Even if it wasn't our garbage, pick it up. You know what I'm saying? Is that you want to just create these rituals that address sloppiness at the root, right? And a lot of times what sloppiness comes from is, they're so pressed to get it done, and the reality is that you say, hey, you know what? We'll just do it tomorrow, right? And that, the customer comes by or drives by to see how things are coming. They don't realize that you just moved mountains for them. All they see is what they understand. What they understand is it looks like a mess, right? So you got to address that. The number 6 reason, the last reason we're going to look at for why people punish restoration companies online is simply bad customer service, right? And I just can't emphasize this enough, that nowadays, the kind of the old gruff concept of a contractor, and you're like, well, they're just a builder, they're just a restorer. That's gone now. That's just not how it works. Nowadays, people expect good customer service in every area, right? And if they don't receive it, they will hop up on a soapbox and tell the world that they were treated badly. Do you agree with that? I mean, some situations, absolutely. In some situations, a person needs to maybe just, that's not the way to deal with it. But the reality is that smart companies just say, this is the way the market is, this is the way the world is, and we're going to just adapt to it, and because we want to win, right? So let's look at some of the common issues that lead to someone saying, bad customer service is leading me to just rip into this person online. Well, the first one is just interactions with the employees that were negative, okay? So your staff, even your subcontractors, are an extension of your brand, right? One of the things we can borrow from franchising is this whole concept, what's called brand experience, right? So that every time you walk into a McDonald's, we want to have the same experience regardless of where you are. And they spend a lot of time thinking about the brand experience, right? And so if your customers, if they're interacting, they don't interact with the CEO of the company. More often than not, they interact with the staff, right? And so we recommend that you choose to make customer service your competitive advantage. Some people say our competitive advantage is that we use so much technology. Our competitive advantage is that, we're always there within 45 minutes. Those are really good things, don't get me wrong. But you should stand in front of your staff and say, how we're going to stand out, amongst other things, is we're going to offer great customer service. Customer service that people say, whoa, like, this is pretty good for a contractor, right? Because if you were to look at the reviews that we looked at, there is so much opportunity to just get so far ahead of your competitors by simply frankly, tucking in your shirt, saying hello, and just being polite. It's amazing how, it doesn't cost you anything, right? We also recommend back to role playing, right? The reality is that people remember role playing, especially because it's awkward, right? Is that you take the time to be able to role play with your staff and be able to say, okay, we're going to create some scenarios, and we're going to practice, dealing with customers and delivering respectful interactions. Another issue is simply just defensiveness when something goes wrong. Okay, and so when there's that defensiveness, customers immediately say, like, I don't understand, like, why are you getting so defensive? I'm just asking you when this is going to get done. They say, oh, hey, come on, man, like, hey, I didn't know that, or I'm just being told what to do, or I'm just dropping this stuff off. Well, the reality is that kind of defensiveness really is very disarming for the customer. And they say, okay, hold on, who's in charge here? Like, who's the professional here, right? And it really creates a lot of friction. So number one is that we recommend you teach your staff the art of customer partnering. Customer partnering is not you versus me, right? Or like, hey, you know what? Well, look, you know what? We're just going to do our thing, and if that's, you're going to have to talk to my boss, right? Customer partnering is, hey, Mike, you seem upset. Remember, we're on the same team here, right? Like, if we're going to get this done properly, we're going to have to work together. So what's frustrating you, right? And it's more about, we're on this side, the problem's over here, not contractor problem. You know what I'm saying? So that's a big important thing. The other thing is you want to create a culture where the customer should never be surprised by bad news. We talked about that earlier. That's so important. It's such a simple concept to tell your staff something happens. They're like, oof, we better clean this up before the customer finds out. No, that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is because you don't realize that the neighbor's looking in on the window and saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to text Shelly right now, right? No, you want to create just take a picture and just text your customer and say, hey, just giving you a heads up. This just happened. We're on it. We're going to resolve it. But you need to know that we want to make sure that you are in the know, right? It takes time, but I'll tell you, what you're avoiding is worth it. And finally, role model. Let me ask you this question. Think about this. Have your staff ever heard you apologize to them for something? Have they ever heard you apologize to one of their colleagues or to a customer? It's so important. You're like, wow, how important could it be? You're in the customer service business, right? Think about the time you finally get a break and you stay at a nice resort, right? And they bring you something to the table and it's not what you ordered, or it's a little bit different, or it's not quite right. And you were to say, hey, this isn't quite right. Can you imagine if they looked at you and they just said, and they walked away? You'd say, well, what the heck? I'm paying for this, right? No, for customer service, you expect them to say, oh, I'm so sorry, sir. My apologies. I'll be right back, right? You are in the customer service business, and the people who really embrace the fact that we are a uniformed customer service industry, they're going to win. The other thing is simply people get frustrated when the bad customer service is associated with just demanding collections, oftentimes even before the job is done, right? Or just collections practices that are very aggressive. Most people don't like going after accounts receivable. And so you put that battle axe or that passive aggressive person on it. And the reality is that they do more damage than the good that you're hoping that they'll unlock, right? So here's some things we recommend. The number one is that we recommend from the very beginning, you have a customer roadmap, a project roadmap that you will go through with the customer. It could be a visual, it could be something you just walk them through, you talk them through, but they need to understand. You say, okay, so today is the estimate, dun, 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 and then that is when we collect payment. And so at that time, you've got about 6 weeks here to make sure that you're in a position to be able to clear this. But just as a reminder, we're going to expect payment roughly around this date, assuming that we're online, we're on pace to get done. And then again, every interaction, just remember the next step in the process is this, and then there's this, and then remember that's when we're going to need to collect payment, right? And so it shouldn't come as a surprise, Finally, when you think of your sales process, right? I think it's really important. I've had an opportunity to train a lot of people in sales, and I really think that one of the things that's missed is just simply reminding the customer to say, and by the way, these are the forms of payment that we collect. We take which one will you prefer to pay us in when the job is done? All of that should be nailed down before the job even kicks off. That they want to pay by check or whatever it is, right? So let's just get to the root of it. So we've covered a lot of ground here. And one other thing that I want to leave you with is to say, well, so many times there are symptoms that grow off of the root of a problem. So let's just leave you with the root that we identified of the 6 most common reasons why customers give restoration companies 1-star reviews. So they are poor communication, poor quality workmanship, delays, feeling overcharged, contractor drama, and just bad customer service. So when we think, okay, what is the root of the issue? So that if you want to just grab the root, just like digging out a weed, just rip the weed out of your company, this is what we observed. Okay, you ready? Weed pulling time. So for poor communication, it just simply breaks down that staff don't seem to understand the value and the impact of every prospective customer and paying customer that they can have on the business, right? Is that the staff just don't realize that if you don't get back to that prospective customer, or if you don't get back to those small jobs, the reality is that the great even playing field of all prospective and actual customers, regardless of size, is online reviews, right? This is the way the world goes. Poor quality workmanship. We think that the root of it really comes down to that staff are simply exhibiting one of two: low competence or low commitment, right? And we think it's grounded in a culture of low accountability. So when you walk on site and you see poor workmanship, ask yourself, is this because of low competence or low commitment? Meaning they knew how to do it and they just chose not to, or honestly, I think they really worked hard at it, but they just didn't know how to do it, right? And so when you can weigh it that way, you can decide what type of accountability should I apply in this situation, right? When it comes to delays, what we see is just staff that just don't know how to set correct expectations around timelines and just courageously learn to share bad news with customers, right? I mean, can you imagine a surgeon that just like couldn't, always sent their assistant to say things didn't go very well, right? I mean, what a gutless surgeon. You've got to teach your staff the ability to set accurate timelines, right? Giving themselves some padding, and how to share bad news with customers. If your staff know how to do that, well, the reality is that so many of the issues that are related to delays go away, okay? Delays happen. Feeling overcharged, what we find is that when customers don't know what to expect and staff don't know the proper way to price a job and explain pricing, these issues pop up. And so what that means is that you have to work with your sales team to be able to make sure that even though things are in a rush, even though the insurance company needs the information right away, to be able to take the time to say, look, the customer needs to understand what's involved in the price, right? And then, whatever it would take, the 15 minutes it would take for that conversation is so much less than the year it would take for you to be able to get your reviews back up, right? And then when it comes to contractor drama, a lot of it really just comes down off so often to just technicians who just don't know how to engage with customers, right? Or subcontractors just don't adopt a sense of responsibility. They're like, well, that's not my client. I'm just working for this restoration company. When you're selecting subcontractors, you need to let them know, say, yes, you're an independent business, but you're an extension of our brand. And we really care about our customers in this business. And we take our reviews very seriously. And so help me understand how you are going to be able to operate as an extension of my customer experience. I strongly recommend that when you meet with a subcontractor, that you provide them with a list of, this is what our expectations are for how a person who's representing us or doing work on our behalf conducts himself on a customer's project, right? You should have that. And then the second thing is with your teams, the reality is that you can't just assume that people know how to talk to people anymore, right? I mean, the pandemic, we kind of all need to just be gracious with each other. We've all kind of forgotten how to interact with humans, right? And so with your staff, don't take for granted that they probably need to learn how to properly and respectfully interact with someone. You watch an old 1940s movie and everyone says, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, whatever you need, right? We got to kind of bring a lot of that element of respect back. When it comes to bad customer service, well, really what it boils down to is that staff just simply don't know how to deliver kind of consistent, good customer service, and really they don't know how to resolve conflict. Because in the stress and the hustle and bustle of a stressful job, the reality is that, sometimes you may make a mistake. And in those moments, your staff need to know how to resolve conflictive situations. Conflict is simply just there's a clog in the relationship, right? Something happened and it needs to be addressed. When I did this, I understand it made you feel this way. What can I do to make it up to you, right? I just want to apologize for that. That was inappropriate. I was frustrated and I was disappointed, but you know what? I apologize if that's how I reacted, right? Sometimes you just need to give your staff a script that they can reference. They can look at it on their phone before they step back in and have that conversation. If you can address the roots, you kill so many of the symptoms, right? If you kind of rip out the root, you don't see a lot of the leaves and branches that grow off a problem. So let me tell you a little bit about us, because one of the things that we're the best in the industry at is helping restoration companies to be able to drive consistent customer and worker experiences. We specialize in helping busy, fast-growing restoration companies and construction companies eliminate inconsistencies from workmanship all the way down to customer service. And we do that through a tool called KnowHow. And so let me just give you the shortest little overview of some of the functionality of KnowHow, and specifically how we help you to be able to avoid some of the 6 most common reasons why customers punish restoration companies online. So let's have a quick look. So here I'm on a company's KnowHow hub. And here, the first thing that we do is that we make it possible for restoration companies to be able to have templates for all their processes and procedures. One of the biggest obstacles to having a process for, say, doing interviews, to resolving customer complaints or doing mitigation work is who has the time to write them. Well, we've already written all of them. And so on KnowHow, when you create an account, the first thing that you can do is access expert-written, pre-built processes and templates for all your mitigation services, your customer experience, your accounting, your sales, your marketing, and you can make them your own so they reflect the way that you want to do things. And so frankly, you can add steps, remove steps, and really we find that if you have a starting point on so many of these processes and procedures, well, basically, it's just a matter of kind of modifying them, making sure that they reflect the way that you like to do things, and then publishing it to your own private branded hub that you then provide to your staff, either in desktop or mobile. You decide who should be able to access it. And then from there, it's very easy for you to be able to provide your staff with them by just simply assigning them processes and providing them assignments of workflows. It's very easy to be able to just, click a button and then boom, they've immediately said, yeah, this is how you mitigate that mold situation. So let's talk about something that's very common, like completing a content pack-out. Well, the reality is that especially when you have staff coming in and you want to be able to know whether or not they're doing things the right way, KnowHow also gives you the real-time visibility of what actions have they taken or not taken on that standardized process. So if you want to know how to complete, where my staff are on completing that content pack-out, you have that level of granularity. Now, one of the things that leads to a lot of customer, bad reviews is just, frankly, choosing the wrong staff to do the work, choosing the wrong subcontractors. So KnowHow also has all the templates on how to do interviews and reference checks and how to properly, do a reference call to see whether or not somebody is who they said they were. So all of that is waiting for you in a tool like KnowHow. Now, one of the things that comes up is that, just simply, staff don't get the training and the support that they need when they're getting onboarded. So on KnowHow, again, you can have all of your onboarding, all of your how-to, all of your guides. You can easily assign it, say, hey, you're starting on Friday, and this is something where the first day this worker's new job, I want them to get pinged, and here are all the steps involved in getting onboarded and oriented as a new worker on our team. Before you step on site, we want you to know what our expectations are for dealing with customers, what our expectations are for dealing with each other. All of that is something that on KnowHow you can clearly define, and then you can easily change and modify templates so they reflect the way that you want things done in your company. And then from there, simply it's a matter of being able to provide that to your staff in a format that they'll actually use. In that case, in the form of KnowHow, it's in a very intuitive and easy to use desktop and mobile application. So when we talk about things like building out your own processes, One of the things that our customers love about KnowHow is that we have pre-built processes on almost everything, from safety to sales to marketing to you name it, right? And we're expanding, and we're really focused on providing the industry with the first complete restoration process and workflow library that they can use as a reference. So from the mobile app, what your staff can do is they select kind of the content that's relevant from them, so that everything is specific to their role. From there, they can very easily find the process or the workflow that they need. And then from there, just a couple search words, there's the process to resolve that customer complaint. I can jump in, and really it just provides the worker with a clear step-by-step guide on what they need to be able to do to reply to that customer, to listen carefully. You can have the questions, you could have a video or an audio file on what that conversation sounds like if you want to provide them with a reference. But for a worker who says, man, this customer is really upset, and what do you want me to do? Again, KnowHow helps you there. KnowHow also makes it so that all of your processes and all of your workflows and all of your systems are available in the language that the worker works in. So one of the biggest things that our customers love about KnowHow is that we're the first software in the industry that provides instant translation. So often the work being done is being delivered by someone who struggles to read in English. And so the ability for them to just immediately select the process that they need to work through, select the language they prefer, is a big killer feature. Now, KnowHow can be used to run all of your projects. It can be used to be able to know at a granular level kind of what needs to be done, who's doing what, where's everybody at, and everything. And so much about KnowHow is how do you build consistency, not only across our customer service or how we resolve complaints, but even across our projects. And so KnowHow, just in a simple and streamlined, intuitive tool, just makes it so easy for a worker to know exactly what it is that they need to do that day, so that they can effectively just be able to do things the right way, do things the way that you want them done. Whether it's using a piece of equipment, whether it's taking a Matterport scan, whatever it is, your staff can instantly find it in seconds. Maybe your staff asks you a question, hey, I'm on site, and how do I do this Matterport scan? Or you know that tomorrow they're going to need to do that. No problem. Your project manager can just pull out their phone, select the worker who's going to have to do it, select the date, and then basically just say, yeah, knowing that tomorrow this is going to show up on their phone, and they're going to have the clear guidance of how to be able to do that step-by-step process for doing that task. So where do we go from here? I hope you found this helpful. The first thing that we recommend is don't avoid it. Get online and read your reviews, and don't just read the last few. Give yourself an hour and dig into it. Figure out, of those 6 most common reasons why people complain, what are the areas that you're doing really great. You don't see any examples of bad workmanship, but identify where are you kind of stumbling as a team so you can do something about it, and you need to address it with your team. Then what we do is that we recommend you target your weaknesses. Your strengths, if you're bringing tension, you're making customer service and customer reviews more of a focus, your strengths will just naturally rise. But the reality is that your weaknesses, generally they're connected to even biases that you might have, or some of the beliefs that you need to change about the way that you run your business. And then we recommend that you think about, how do I equip myself? How do I arm myself so that all of my staff have instant access to the right way to do things, regardless of the project they're on, the service they're delivering, the interaction that they're having. And KnowHow is the leading tool to support that. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about this. The research was really, really insightful for us. And we hope that this has provided you with just a little bit more insight into why customers take to their keyboards and just wreck restoration companies online. And I hope that it gives you some tools to avoid them, some tools to maybe go back and resolve some, but more importantly for you to run a more successful and a more profitable business that you can be really proud of. So we ask you to consider downloading our ebook. If you go to 5starrestorer.com, you can get a free copy of the ebook that has all the details, all the summary, a little more information. You can share it with your staff if you want to make it just kind of a great learning opportunity. And then we recommend that you check out KnowHow. If you've got 30 minutes and you want to see how we work with fast-growing, busy restoration companies to be able to, amongst other things, completely transform the consistency of their customer experiences, come and have a look, and we'd love to talk to you when you have 30 minutes. So thanks again. My name's Leighton. I'm with the team at KnowHow. Thanks for making time to invest in improving your customer reviews.